You're going to spend $1 million trying to get elected?
Well, if I don't get elected, I can't make the world a better place.
Well, that's true, too.
Well, that's what they'll say, but that's like the old adage, peace through war.
Right. Kill for peace. I mean, no, that was what they were telling us.
That's exactly right.
And they convinced us.
Sure they did.
They did.
That is their job.
Well, that was brainwashing.
They would not be good at their job.
And it worked.
Well, you create the toxicity, not the toxicity, but you create the idea of a toxic other, and that other is now coming after you. They're coming after your resources. Whether I can't believe I was watching the news the other day, and Trump pulled out the old "they're coming for your women." What is it, 1906?
Really?
Yes.
I missed that one.
I couldn't believe it. Like, what are we going to start doing? Dressing guys up in blackface and rolling out the KKK?
Well, you better be careful with that. It'll get you fired.
Good.
Yeah.
As it should.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, it should. It was a horrible thing.
Should.
But we're so far removed from that.
And that's the problem.
We don't realize how horrible that is.
Unless you are still a part of the marginalized groups and populations. African American community, even if you've made it out, and unless you've, barring those who have sold out, like Ben Carson or Candace, what's her name, they're all well aware of the history and the nonsense that went down and the struggle to just get the pittance that's being doled out now.
Right.
You know, it's insane. And like we discussed this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about women. Like, it was 1920 that women got the right to vote.
Right.
White women got the right to vote.
Right.
And the people that stood in the way of that, the people that would end up being the madmen of in the 1950s and 60s, and the Trump grab 'em types and the Harvey Weinsteins and all, they all stood in the way of all of that because women were property and they should know their place.
And it's just changing now from
it's just having
equal.
its moment.
It's becoming equal, though.
I hope so.
It has.
I
think that Me Too movement has made a lot of ground.
God, I hope so.
Well, it has.
I hope so. I mean, it's certainly put men on notice, and that's a good thing.
They were barbaric to them. They behaved poorly, and now it's over. I think it's over.
I can understand. Listen, we all make mistakes in our youth when we're trying to figure, and by youth I mean like single digit youth, when you're trying to figure stuff out, and you don't know X, Y, and Z, and you're just sort of discovering the world.
Not sure.
And I'll even grant you your early teenage years, but at some point, the moral compass, empathy has to kick in. You've got to know that something's wrong, in the way that you're treating somebody.
Well, most do.
Most
not
do,
all.
but
not all.
Unfortunately, like we said, the people that are in power, the people that are being convicted of this stuff or being called onto the carpet, they're not so much.
Money and power is what does it.
There's no consequence for them.
Right.
There's no consequence. Somebody, Sophia asked me, she said, do you think fines should be levied out, not in dollar amounts, but in equivalence to your income, right? So let's say you get a speeding ticket, we're going to take 10% of your next check. Not the speeding ticket's $200, right? Speeding ticket is 10% of your next check. Wow. Okay, so every dollar you make, a dime of that has to go to the state now. Now, even if you're rich, that's a consequence. So let's say, right? Now we're funding whole programs off of rich people speeding, and they would feel the impact of their actions, as opposed to just, because what's $200 if you're making $10,000 a week?
That's not a bad idea, really.
Right?
But if you're destitute, what are you going to get fined?
Right, $200 could put you under. That could take you out of the game.
If you don't have any income and you're living on the street and you do something wrong, you don't have to pay nothing because you're destitute.
Well, we have to figure that out, right?
But no, that makes a lot of sense. Well,
we could use the $1,000 from the guy making $10,000 a week to fund the homeless guy and get him back on his feet.
But a drunk driving ticket used to be like $29 or $39 when I was a kid. Yeah. Now it's $10,000. I think it changed a lot of people's attitudes about it.
Sure.
So when you hit real hard in the pocket, that does lasting
But even then,
consequence. It's
$10,000 for me or you just to throw out because we had a nice, a fun time at the bar is devastating.
It is.
But if you're rich, you pay your $10,000, or
grand
you
and-
get a lawyer and you get the whole thing dismissed.
That's our justice system. You can
Yeah.
pay. You can pay for your
can pay-
justice.
you can pay your
but
way.
the thing is, drunk driving is bad.
Yeah,
People
sure it is.
die.
Sure it is.
Innocent people die because of it. So it needs to be stopped. I don't think this is actually going to stop it. I think it certainly slowed it down.
Right.
They brought Uber and Lyft into the picture.
Yeah, and
which
I think that's great.
It is.
I think
It
that's
is great.
That's where the autonomous cars start to come into play.
That would be a wonderful thing.
Right? Robots don't get drunk.
Right. Alexa, get me an Uber right away
That's it.
at the town tavern. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's coming. Well,
That's
it's here. It's here.
But that's technology overcoming problems. The reality is, and we're seeing this today. There is a huge backlash. We're going to jump right into the election here. There's a huge backlash right now on left and right as people are trying to figure out what this new world means, and we're searching for old answers to deal with new problems. Right? Not realizing that as more and more human beings have come on this planet, we have become more and more complex of a society, whereas to now we're really a global civilization. We really are.
We are.
We have different counties that we call countries, but if you go to pick the most different country you can think of, right? Give me an example.
Outer Mongolia.
Outer Mongolia. Guess what? You can still spend dollars in Outer Mongolia.
You could probably go to McDonald's and
Probably in what is
you
that?
used to be able to.
Ulaanbaatar or something like
yeah,
that.
they may have a fast food joint, but 50 years ago, you'd have to get there on a yak.
Sure.
You could maybe fly to somewhere close, but you had to walk in or take a yak.
I'll do you one better, right? You give me Al Qaeda at the beginning of the century, or you give me ISIS now. Give them a pallet full of American dollars with all their death to American rhetoric and all that. All right, death to America, burn those dollars. I bet you they won't do it.
No, because they use that to further their cause.
So there you go. You have a global civilization right now. We all work and operate under pretty much the same rules. There's little differences here and there, but honestly, they're not all that different.
Right.
Right. We can talk about free societies and despotism and all that, but if you have the right dictator, quite frankly, Caesar Augustus was a dictator, but he was one of the greatest leaders we've ever had in, Western history.
Made a great civilization, made it comfortable living.
Franklin FDR pretty much reigned as a dictator while he was in. He would, if he could have lived forever, he'd still be president. Probably, other than that whole concentration camp thing, probably the greatest president we've had in our history. So the right leader is perfectly fine. Dictatorship isn't bad if you have the right dictator.
Right. He keeps everything status quo.
And democracy is not good if the people are either one, misinformed, or, as is the case in this election, completely inundated in fear on both sides of the aisle. That this is an election of fear, and nothing is going to get fixed from that. Absolutely nothing is going to get fixed from that. Because the Democrats, which sort of drew the line in the sand and said, we will not vote for Hillary because corruption, warmongering, unconstitutional actions, yada, 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 too many questionable ties to Saudi Arabia and Libya and this, that, and the other. Now it's any blue will do just to get Trump out of power.
Right, anyone will do.
Any blue will do.
Yeah.
But that's how you got Trump in the first place. Any blue will do. And the Republicans are even worse because you have a D in front of your name. Screw it, you're done. There was a candidate, I'm not sure if he won his primary or not, that was out in Ohio, I want to say, who campaigned as a Democrat, got nowhere, changed to a Republican. I think he actually ended up winning his primary. I'm not sure. But he's a progressive. He's like a Bernie Sanders progressive. But he just switched his, party to R, and all of a sudden he became popular.
Like party is like a tribe. It's like
yeah.
the Republicans are a tribe and the Democrats are a tribe, and they're against each other.
Right.
And it's dividing our country.
It's like the Eagles
United
versus
States.
the Cowboys.
It's dividing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like the Eagles versus
that.
the Cowboys, except this matters. Like things matter now.
It shouldn't be so tribal. We should be more together here.
But that's where the fear comes in. We went from families and sort of pods to villages because it was safer. Because we were afraid of things that went bump in the night. And once we could sustain agriculture and all that, we started to live in more and more complex societies. So as we would get complex, different problems would come up. So the village worked for a while, but then we needed more people because maybe we needed to irrigate something, or we needed bigger fields, or we needed more defense, right? So we started to build towns, and then those towns would become cities, and those cities would become kingdoms. And then you would start getting empires where people would come in and just scoop up a bunch of kingdoms. That's how Egypt was founded. That's how Persia came about. Now we have the nation state. And this is the consolidation of cultural heritage, traditions, identities, this, that, and the other, but one nation state to the next. If you go into a Saudi Arabian living room, it may look different in the details, but it looks like a living room, right? So there's very few things. A road in Qatar is a road in Canada, right?
An airport in Saudi Arabia.
All that, so
airport in Philly, but nicer from what I hear.
And mind you,
in the world, there are nicer airports than our country.
Oh my God, Philly is so terrible.
That's what they say.
That's a podcast all in itself. But so yeah, you have the situation where now things have gotten increasingly worse. Thank you for joining us for that clip of our weekly podcast. If you want to get more bonus footage or join us for the entire podcast, head on over to Patreon, where our Eagle, Tiger, and Dragon subscribers get access to not only what we cast and talk about, but advanced lessons in your forms, in your Tai Chi, and in your life.